Noob School. All right, well, welcome back to Noob School. John Sterling here, and today I've got a great friend, Kevin Korschgen. Kevin, thanks for being here.
You're very welcome.
Yeah. So Kevin's relatively new to Greenville. He moved here, 4 or 5 years ago?
It's been 8 years.
8 years. 8 years ago. And Kevin has many talents, one of which is he's probably the best jazz drummer in the area. He's also organizes some wonderful jazz events, big promoter of jazz in the area. And he sells nationally. He promotes jazz brands nationally through the very cool and hip jazz radio stations around the country. So, I've gotten to know Kevin as a musician and also as a promoter, and just been very impressed with the way he goes about his business and sells. And I thought, some of his skills might be interesting to all of us, even if we might not be in the music business. And so I asked Kevin to be with us today. So welcome aboard, Kevin.
Glad to be here, Jim.
Yeah. Well, before we get into where we are now, let's back up to the beginning so people can understand you a little bit better. All I know for sure, I think, is that you did grow up on a farm up in the Midwest somewhere.
I grew up on a farm in northeast Missouri.
Missouri.
And it's really, I want to tell you, in the middle of nowhere.
Uh-huh.
If you can picture Quincy, Illinois, Hannibal, Missouri, where Mark Twain's from, we're up in probably about 20 miles off the river, off Mississippi.
Okay.
And it's interesting. I went to a one-room, my first 7 years, I went to a one-room country schoolhouse. The school had 8 grades in it.
Yeah.
One teacher taught all 8 grades, and there were usually about 15 kids in the whole school. So some years nobody was born, so there was nobody in that class.
Yeah.
No running water.
Is this a poor man's Montessori? Is that what this is? You couldn't afford another teacher.
I think they played. I think it was one of the last ones in the country.
Okay.
And also let you know how old I am.
Well,
But
we're about the same age.
so yeah, I grew up on a farm, and thankful that I did.
Yeah.
Loved every minute of it. When my parents got divorced, and I kind of moved to Illinois, Quincy, Illinois, and then Jacksonville, Illinois.
Mm-hmm.
Went to college at the University of Wisconsin in Eau Claire.
Mm-hmm.
They have a good jazz program up there. That's what got me there.
Okay.
And then after college, I moved to Chicago, where my mom had moved to, suburbs, and didn't know what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
So for probably, I guess it was about 3 years, I played some gigs, bartended, worked at Motorola, and then finally decided to use my degree. My degree was in music education.
Yeah.
So I started teaching at a great school, Notre Dame High School for Boys, a great school run by the university, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
So I taught there for 6 years, and then I went back on my master's degree in music ed, and went into the city of Chicago to be a maverick, really. At Notre Dame, we had really good jazz bands, good bands, and we would be at contests all the time, and I'd never, ever see a Chicago public school there.
Yeah.
So I went into the city to see what I could do in urban education. That's what I did most of my, really, that was my career.
Yeah.
And spent most of my adult life in Chicago.
So back it up a little bit to college. You went for a jazz program. And did you get, was that just like a real highlight to get to play that much music, and
It was interesting. When you go to music school, you take one of 2 paths, and they kind of direct you there. You're a performance major, and if you're not one of the better players, like I was not at the time, they push you into education. So there was a lot of playing. There'd be a little bit more if you're a performance major.
Gotcha.
But yeah, I played a lot, and played in bands outside of, I played in a polka band, I played in a hard rock trio, and jazz. So, you do play a lot.
Yeah.
It was wonderful.
And so you eventually decided, I'm going to take on music education in the public schools of Chicago. And what made you want to do that? Because, I would imagine the Notre Dame High School was a pretty sweet gig.
It was a great gig. Catholic schools don't pay real good, so I went back to get my master's to try to
Okay.
And they don't pay into a pension.
Okay.
And I was thinking about that. Thank God I was thinking about it.
So it's more of a lifestyle choice if you want to teach there.
And so the urban thing, I've always kind of had my hands been around Afro-American culture a lot. My ex-wife was black. She was a jazz singer. And so my son is mixed. So I've always like just the whole United Nations kind of approach. And so I think I would I would see that these schools never showed up. And so I've always had like an interest, not just in giving back, but just how does all that work? You know, how do we, I can't say I wanted to go and better the world that much. I just wanted to get in there and get my hands dirty.
Yeah.
So I could say this in the midst. In working in public schools, I've worked in some of the most challenging schools, and at the end, in School for the Arts, in some of the most kind of elite too.
Yeah.
So I've taught in, boy, the whole spectrum.
So when you were in the public school system, sometimes you were in the regular public school system, and sometimes you moved to the School of the Arts or something that was more
Right at the
specific.
end, I did.
Okay.
Right.
And so selling wise, talk to us about the sales you had to do with, on one side, the administration of the school to be able to create these performances and travel and get more equipment. I'm sure they were always fighting for something. And then on the other side, to get the kids to buy into the program, that if they practice and come together as a team, we're going to win a championship and it's going to be good for them, that kind of thing.
Right. Well, let me start with the kids.
Yeah.
And thinking about coming to talk to you, I was
Yeah.
thinking, well, I've never really been a salesman in my life. And this is exactly what I thought. That's what we do as teachers, we sell.
Yeah.
And that selling, to me, through the years, it's about turning kids' heads, or what I like to call getting them bit. And I found there was, for me in my life, there was two approaches, and when I made one switch to the other approach, I became a better teacher. So the one I'm talking about is, in my early years, I kind of modeled myself after a few people who were very successful, who were the hard-nosed, kind of mean, demanding. The old days I used to joke about, they'd put the wood on you,
Yeah.
And in the Catholic school, it was strict. So I saw some modeling of that kind of like the hardline coach, Bobby Knight kind of thing. And my first years of teaching, and especially in kind of a rough school in Chicago, even at Notre Dame, I took that approach. And it had some success, but I didn't feel good about it. And through a couple mentors, they weren't designated to me as mentors, I saw a different approach. And I actually totally, I think, turned myself around till the other approach became then inspiring. And I know that sounds simple. There was a quote, I was thinking about all this on my drive over. There was a quote I used to tell myself, not the kids. Came from a French shipbuilder, Navy sailor. And it's a great quote you might want to look up. It says that if you want to build a ship, just don't drum up men and women to gather wood, designate jobs, and give orders. Instead, instill in them the love for the sea. And so that's kind of what I started to do.
Yeah.
And I think the secret, and I think this is something you might get about sales, the secret was, I've seen so many great teachers, there's hundreds of different approaches. So you can be a quiet, shy guy and be a great teacher. You can be very charismatic like you, John. But depth and breadth of knowledge I found was the whole key. Because then that's what turned the kids' heads when you lay something out to them that's kind of profound. They don't have to be, a kid doesn't have to be, you don't have to call them a deep thinker, but things that are really profound and right up. Maybe like with great coaching, you play basketball, when the coach can focus you on that gem. And so that's how I sold it to the students. And that was so much more successful.
Yeah. you're talking about the result or the end result or where they were going versus what they're having to do to get there?
I would say the process.
Process.
There's another quote
Yeah.
I used for the students by Abraham Lincoln. It was, if you had 8 hours to chop down a tree, spend 6 sharpening the axe. And it's interesting, if I used that at the right time, it made a difference.
Interesting. So you did that, as I recall, it was a couple of decades, right?
Oh, yeah.
3 decades?
I taught for about 26 years.
Yeah. Wow. And your wife also taught in the school system too, right?
No,
No. I had that wrong. I thought she was a teacher also.
No.
Okay. So you then retired
Yes.
whenever it was appropriate, somewhere around, whatever retirement age is. I'm going to give away your age, but I remember meeting you after I'd seen you like at a jazz event, and I think you were sitting at the Aloft Hotel, like on your computer, and I walked up and introduced myself and said I'd seen you at the thing, and of course we hit it off immediately. But asking you, because I like you so much and what you're doing for Greenville, how in the world did you end up here after that? And so I'd love you to tell the group how you and your wife chose Greenville from Chicago.
Yes, we found an interesting travel log. I don't know the guy's name. He's from New York. He's bought a place. He's going to retire in Asheville. He had this travel log, online travel log for North Carolina and South Carolina. He went very systematic through all the little towns, the pluses, everything about the little towns. And so we read through that. But then you get a phone call with him. You get a half an hour phone thing. And we called and we told him a little bit about what we thought. So he mentioned Greenville. That was one thing.
Yeah.
But then the other thing is one summer, in the heat of the summer, I think it was August, we made a little trip down. We visited Asheville, Charlotte, Wilmington, Charleston, Savannah, and then here. And this is where we chose. It just felt good. It felt smart.
Yeah.
I mean, I could tell you, we put little coding about all the other places. But this, for me, it was just kind of, it just seemed smart, clean,
when you
and
made
beautiful.
your trip here or on the guide or something, did anything alert you to the jazz scene here?
I went online to see what was going on, and I saw a few. Online, I could find out that there was a Shannon Hoover. I found out there was Matt Dingledine, and it was about it. It didn't look like there was a lot going on.
Yeah.
Not like maybe a little bit more in Charlotte and Charleston, but I studied that, but not a whole lot.
Yeah.
Not a whole lot.
Well, as you know better than I do, there's a lot going on.
Yes, there is.
You just have to know. There's no good guide for what's going on in jazz in Greenville, but there's a lot of different places and jam sessions. And, of course, the thing that Kevin's famous for in Greenville, or one of them anyway, is his underground jazz session also called The Wheel.
The Wheel Sessions.
The Wheel Sessions.
Wheelsessions.com.
Wheelsessions.com. So I remember, I don't even know, I might have got it sent to me on Facebook because I like jazz or something, but the first time it popped up and it said, underground jazz at the Wheel Session, this Thursday night, 7 o'clock, and it was like at a undisclosed or a location I didn't know about in West Greenville. And I went in, it was like a building, there was nothing on it. You couldn't even see through the windows, except for there was this old wheel on the door. So I knew I was in the right place.
Well, let me correct you.
Yeah.
The Wheel.
Yeah.
So just real quick.
It's a good story, though.
It is. The storefront we're talking about is right next to Naked Pasta. There used to be a gentleman, Ed Creighton, who owned Naked Pasta. And so on top of this storefront of mine is a white wheel.
Oh.
And it's still there.
So there
And
was
most
no
people
wheel.
never
There was
seen
no
it.
wheel on the regular
Wasn't
door?
on the door. No, it's up above that building. A white. I don't know how it ever got there. I don't think Ed ever knew how it got there.
Huh.
So that's why we called it the wheel sessions.
That's a crazy name. But you walked in there, particularly the first time, it was jaw-dropping because the chairs were all donated. They were all like mismatched
It
chairs.
was Ed's man cave.
Yeah, there was a couple of odd sofas in there,
Mm-hmm.
and a few jazz paintings, and it was a mess. One little old bathroom for everyone to share, and people just loved it. They loved something about the bohemian nature of walking, like what you would think a jazz club would be back in the old days. And so anyway, I'm sure I'll make more mistakes as I describe it because this is just romanticizing it in my head. But Kevin works really hard to gather an eclectic mix of the best jazz musicians, mostly from the area. I'll say Charlotte, Asheville, around Atlanta, some from Florida, and then some of the best people from here, and kind of mix them all together for these spontaneous, sessions. Would that make sense?
I think it makes sense.
Yeah.
I think in reality we've never had a band.
Right.
It's always like I would call John, and we might talk about who we want to play. I'm always putting players who have not played together.
Yeah.
Most of the time,
Right.
or a few people who have
Yeah.
not, or they know each other, and then for that night we just kind of decide what we're going to play.
Yeah.
Maybe a short rehearsal.
Right.
And almost always a short rehearsal beforehand, and then we hit it.
Yeah.
So-
When he says short rehearsal, we're talking 10 minutes.
Yeah, 10 minutes to 40, no more than that.
You had one last week with Ronnie Elliott, this wonderful young phenom, 14-year-old jazz guitarist, and I heard that for this young kid that the rehearsal was 10 minutes.
About that, 10 or 15. We started a couple of tunes, and I would say,
That's good.
I kind of want to watch it. We started, and said, that's good. What else do you?
You don't want to waste. You don't want to waste it, right?
Well, kind of. And then after a couple,
Yeah.
I just asked Ron, is there anything else? Anything you want to, Ron? He said, no, I think I'm good. So, yeah, just.
Well, I got to play with Ronnie once last year, and I'll always savor that because he's going to be a famous musician one day.
Famous. He is.
Trading licks with Ronnie.
That's right.
At the Bohemian. Oh, man. Well, that's part of the sales thing is I want you to take your time and describe how somebody moves here from Chicago, doesn't know a soul, and creates this wonderful underground jazz program that's been going on for how many years now?
Well, 7.
7 years.
7.5 years.
Yeah, and you have a big mailing list, a big Facebook following. So how did you go about, what are the steps from not knowing a soul to getting that first gig done?
Well, I would say it was step by step. And I never really started off to have it be anything much. It started off, I could have called the sessions Kevin's play dates. I would just call some musicians and we'd split the door. But then because I call it the wheel sessions, I gave the first one a number. That was good. So now we know the next session's 105.
Yeah.
So the first one went well, and so we did a second. So it just kind of, I would say it just gained momentum as it went. And as it's gone, maybe year by year, I realized, hey man, this is kind of happening more and more. But I never really had a grand plan.
Yeah.
I've never, maybe different than most of the people would be bringing. I've never been a businessman. This is the first time I've created anything like this. So it was really just kind of learning as I went. As we got close to the 100, I knew it was coming, but I wasn't, even all that aware. I thought it's going to come, and then it came. We had a really nice session for that. And
Who was it?
Sold out. Oh my God, I can't remember. I remember I wanted to use local folks, so Brad Jepson was on that, Tom Wright,
Yeah.
Peter Demery was on that.
Yeah.
I think Shannon played bass.
Okay.
I'm sure he did. And the only person not local probably was Philip Howell on piano.
Okay.
I think Philip played that one.
Yeah, he feels like a local. Though.
He feels local,
Yeah.
yes, even though he's from Charlotte.
Yeah.
So the steps were just small increments. I feel like we'd go up and we'd be there, and then it would go up a bit. I think the reason it's been successful is maybe because we've remained small. It's really a one-man operation. And so what has happened, I think the reason it's worked is because I get to curate it.
Yeah.
And somebody once told me, the secret is to just make great art. And so it's always been about the artist coming in and having complete license and
Yeah.
creativity in
Yeah.
what they want to do.
Yeah.
If you come in, we do what you want to do.
Yeah.
There's no time limit. You don't have to play this long. There's no restrictions. So
Yeah.
I think the musicians like it.
Yeah.
And I think that's it. It's everything. It stayed very clear what it is.
Yeah.
Even my mission I have is very clear. It's just to entertain, enrich, and enlarge the Greenville jazz community. And so I think that's why it's just never really grown just in size. It's not in size,
Yeah.
but the brand has never changed.
Right.
You know how like when people come, and for those of you who don't know, people come to this location, it's a photography studio. It would be like finding this place.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And you walk in, it's like, and then you walk into the studio here, and it's amazing. You walk in where I have the sessions, people get seated. In 104 sessions, I've never told the audience, we'd like you to keep your voice down.
Right.
We start, you can hear a pin drop.
Yeah.
And so that brand has never changed. We
Right.
put out beer and wine, and we take an intermission that's really all about the fellowship.
Yeah.
The intermission, everybody's talking, people
Yeah.
talking music. So we've never changed that. You know,
Yeah.
it stayed the same.
I never thought about that. That's amazing because I've been to a lot of them, as you know, and there's never anyone like in the back talking or, making a noise. Everyone respects what's going on. They're there to hear the music.
They are.
And I think from the musician's perspective, so many of your musicians, they play weddings or bars or whatever, and they're like, well, you got to start at 8:15 and you got to stop it, and we don't want any of this, and we
Right.
want these songs, and these guys just get to wail on it.
Musicians are happy when they play the music. They're happy playing.
Yeah.
I think the audience is happy.
Yeah.
If the musicians are happy playing what they're playing, having a ball,
Right.
then I think the audience is the winner.
Yeah, you've done a remarkable job making it a little bit better all the time. I think it's one of these examples with a lot of these folks that are our audience, are entrepreneurs also, or they want to be entrepreneurs one day. And I try to help people understand that, they very often see a business person who's all of a sudden like really successful. And they're like, I want to do that. And it's more important that they understand what those first 5 years are like
Yeah.
as you start to build it. So if you've been doing it 7 years, if we fast forward plus 13, what does that look like? Maybe you got your own place by then. Maybe it's two nights a
be.
week. I mean, who knows? But you can't get there from here. You just got to
Right.
get here. You got to keep incrementally moving it along with an occasional breakthrough that you probably can't
Yeah.
predict,
That's right.
And
And I have a couple things in mind, just small little ideas such as I was thinking I might start a little series where I take the wheel sessions on the road. So like I do one in Asheville.
Yeah.
And because I use a lot of players from up there.
Yeah.
Maybe do one in Charleston. I mean, it'll take a lot of connection, but I think through maybe a nonprofit down there or a
Yeah.
radio station, help promoting it. That's one of the things I was thinking about doing.
Yeah.
And I feel like the quality of music we have has gone way up.
Yeah.
I feel like, and that's the thing I'm probably most proud of. I think the musicians, because of what we have is so unique, when they come in, it's time to go.
Yeah.
I think what the music we're presenting is
Yeah.
pretty high level.
So
proud of that.
For anyone interested in this really cool underground jazz thing, it's thewheelsessions.com or Wheel Sessions?
Wheelsessions.com.
Wheelsessions.com. And then you
Yes.
can follow it or go on Facebook and follow it, and it'll tell you when these things are. It'll announce like, hey, it's next Thursday, and here's the deal. And It's kind of cool. So let's back up just for a second because I forgot one question. We talked about selling when you were a teacher to the students. Let's talk about selling to the administration. How would you get them to let you do what you wanted?
Success. I think, put it like a coach. If the coach is winning, they leave him alone.
Okay.
Most administrators don't know too much about music education.
Yeah.
And we live any teacher will tell you this, we live at a time where they try to micromanage teachers because the results are so important. It's kind of a common thing. Probably in business too, you're wrestling with that.
Yeah.
So for me, they pretty much left me alone because I was putting out pretty good product. I think if your kids score high on, if you're a math teacher and your kids are scoring well, they're probably going to give you that freedom.
Yeah.
There were fights to get money. I mean, there were times I'd push for it. I guess I used more sugar and honey than I did fighting. In general, I had some really good administrators.
Good.
So
you found in that case you were delivering results.
yes.
And that's the way you got what you wanted.
Yeah, I think that's it.
Good. Well, it's nice when it works like that. That's good. That's good. That's excellent. And then sticking to the music theme, tell us about your promotional work. And I think the way I understand it is somebody hired you or pays you to call the jazz radio stations around the country and promote certain new jazz CDs. And because with your background, you can explain to them,
Yes.
this is that, this is whatever. Can you tell us about that?
Yes. So there's a lady, Kate Smith Promotions. Actually, she's been kind of a good friend of my mom for some time.
Yeah.
And Kate had a great jazz club in Chicago. She's some lady. She had a place called the Bop Shop. But Kate, some years ago, started this business, and I've worked for her now for about 2.5 years. What she does is she'll take, such as yourself, say you have a CD.
Yeah.
You would come to her as a client, and you have a new CD, and then you'll pay her, and we will get it played in radio stations across the world, actually,
Okay.
country and the world. So we are a CD promoter, a project promoter. And so what I do is she'll give me a list of DJs to call. So
Yeah.
I call and email DJs across the country, some in Europe, and the most important thing is try to build a relationship with them. And you're right, because I'm a musician, it takes time.
Yeah.
I have great respect because, this dovetails in something you once told me. A lesson I learned from you. There's been people I call and they never respond. And rather than get upset by that, I've maybe called again. And out of the blue, they'll call. Like, just you told me what happened.
Yeah.
And they'll say, oh, Kevin, I've been meaning to respond to you, but I never did.
Yeah.
And but I think by being a jazz musician and the fact that we sell jazz recordings, that gives me an empathy or whatever you would call it with them.
Yeah.
That does help. So I
Absolutely.
feel like I'm just now getting better or relatively maybe good at it. Not great yet,
Are these all jazz-only stations?
Oh, man, it's so interesting. No.
Okay.
Some of them, a few of them are. There's WBGO in Boston, which is, I think, almost 24/7. One of the things that surprised me when I grew up, and I used to listen to jazz DJs, they'd be on, every day, 5 days a week for maybe a 3-hour show. Now a lot of these guys have one show a week for 2 or 3 hours. So the scene has changed.
The rest of the time, is it just rolling jazz?
Yep. Sometimes they buy a station, a show. Some guys sell their shows.
Yeah.
And of course now, especially since COVID, a lot of them don't go in the studio. So some of the guys are transitioning to digital rather than the hard CD.
Tell us about this selling to these people, breaking through to a DJ and getting them to play your music.
I try not to bug them. Kate my boss would, I'll tell you this because it's kind of like probably relates to what you think.
Yeah.
She would like me to sell harder, I think. But I'm very conscious that I don't bug somebody. So I try to, for me, that's kind of the line, that's kind of my personality.
Yeah.
So I try to do that line. Fortunately or unfortunately, for me, disappointingly, very few guys pick up the phone and talk to you. And that's a change that Kate's seen in the last 5 years or so. So a lot of it is emailing. But what I do is I don't send a group email. I'll send individual ones. So it takes some time to kind of like, so through that and the conversations, once I get them on the phone, once I get through a little of the initial thing, then we have, I have some nice relationships with, guys I can't wait to wait, and a couple women that I can't wait to meet someday.
Yeah.
We talk about getting together when I come in.
So when they play it, then do you get a report that says they played it?
It's another learning curve. I always assumed that everything that was played on a radio station is reported to a specific place.
Yeah.
It's not that way. There's a college station. There's a thing called Jazz Week, which is a magazine that keeps a poll. There's Jazz Week reporters. So some of the guys do that. That's the one we like. There's one called Spinatron. There's a couple new ones. Some guys don't report. Some guys will print out their playlist and send it to Kate. Other people will just tell me, yeah, I played it. And we have to go with that. So, of course, the people we represent, the whole thing is about getting that data back to them so that they know they were played, how many times they were played at this station, how many plays they got, how many possible plays they got. So at the end of the promotion, Kate will give them the readout that gives them all that information. And she is good. She's meticulous. But that's one of the hard things. And she and another gentleman do that. They do that accounting. I just do the sales, so to speak. But they do the gathering of that info. But I thought it would be a more cut and dried process of their reporting. But some of them, don't report at all.
What would you say the #1 jazz station in the country was?
Oh, well, that's maybe WBGO.
Okay.
There's one in Washington, D.C. that's called Jazz and Justice. It's got 3 DJs on there that are old school, and they've been in the business for years. Like, for instance, a guy named Rusty Hussain. And he's interviewed everybody. I remember the first time nobody had gotten him, and I called him. I noticed his show was on Thursdays at a certain time, and I called, and he picked up. He said, "Hello." I said, "Is this Rusty?" He said, "Yeah, this is Rusty." And I said, "Well, this is Kevin." So, "Yeah, what you got?" I said, "Well, we sent the CD," and then he's, "Okay, yeah, well, I got it. I'll check it out. Good, got to go." And I don't call him very often, and he won't play something unless it's top level. But he's always like that. But I got through to him. But he is very much like down to business. And I'll check it out. He usually doesn't. Because he knows most of those guys know what they're gonna play. And
there was one I found in Russia a couple of years ago that played great 24/7
there's a lot
jazz.
of great European jazz. There's one recently. There's a guy's show I found I like better than anybody. His name is Ben Body. And there's an online only show. By the way, all these stations stream their shows. But it's only online. It's called Taint Radio. And he lives in Raleigh. But they have other DJs that live around the country. And I love his show. It's on, I think, 3 days a week. So I found them, but they are strictly an online station. They have no call letters. They're just called Taint Radio. And I love them. There's so many great stations around. But I would say WBGO, which is in Boston.
Switching gears again on your wheel sessions, social media, I know you're using Facebook for that. Anything else?
A disclaimer, John, you know this. I'll use almost a bad word. I blow at social media.
Okay.
And the reason is I don't like any of it. I go in and so what I do on Facebook, I'll go in create an event, and then I'll go back once or twice and share it. I'm missing the whole boat there. I've had some people say, well, maybe I can help you. I've gone a different avenue. This might be helpful to you. My email list is everything. It gets larger and larger.
Yeah.
And on my emails, if you see my emails, I try to make them succinct and to the point.
Yeah.
I never sell anything else.
Yeah.
But the thing I do, I think this might be interesting for sales. I think you and I talked about it. I've created a relationship with the Greenville Journal.
Yeah.
And we've figured out, initially I started without asking, I was putting an ad in occasionally in Town magazine, because I'd see a town, I thought, oh, this is a great demographic. You know, this is the demographic that comes to my shows.
Yeah.
And then when I finally went and met with them, they said, that's probably not the best thing. So what I've done, I've put all my eggs into one little basket, and before each show now, I'll put an ad in the Greenville Journal, but they don't put it in the arts section. They put it in the Friday newspaper. And I find that brings me people. And what I'm doing is doing it every time. Now, it costs me money. It's not a free event at listing.
Yeah.
But I've found that, and I feel that if I just keep doing the same thing, so the same people see it, you know, maybe the fifth time. Well, I've seen that before, so I think that maybe they will check that out. So that's something I feel good about.
Yeah.
A success is just finally in my mind deciding I'm going to do this one thing. Because I tried other things. I won't name the names, but some of the online things like GLV Today,
Yeah.
or that, you know, and trying there and paid them, one of the companies like that, a little money. But it didn't seem to do me. None of the online stuff seemed to help me.
Yeah. Well, I'll say this, you know, we do a lot of online stuff with our business. The end result of what you're looking for, typically with the online presence, is your email list. So you've done a good job building your email list.
Yeah.
But the reason you might do Twitter or Facebook or whatever is to capture those emails so you can have this one place for all your customers. Because Facebook could kick you off or go out of business or who knows. But as long as you have those emails, you're in good shape. So I think, you know, somehow you've managed to do that.
And you asked me new things. It may be in this next year, with the help of somebody, I may go down that road. You know, if I want the thing to grow that much. All I really want, John, is for people in the area to know about us. So if they're interested in jazz, they can find us.
Yeah.
I really, you know, that's all I really want.
Well, you're pretty much doing that. The last time I went, you were completely full.
Yeah, I think we're getting there.
Just have Ronnie play every week.
That's right.
Everyone loves Ronnie.
They do.
Okay, let me ask you this. What is your favorite book?
Ken Follett's what did he call that series? Pillars of the World, or Pillars of the Earth. It was a 3-novel series, especially the first book in that.
What's it
series.
about?
It traces family. It starts in the Middle Ages.
Uh-huh.
This guy's a cathedral builder,
Uh-huh.
poor man, but he was a great cathedral builder. So he would be hired, and it was how to. So there were a couple families, through different ways,
Yeah.
and it traces them, and then it goes. The next book goes into the next century, and the families move on. The last book's more. It gets into the early 1920s and so on.
Interesting.
But the first book, those Middle Ages, the way people lived, and it was fascinating.
I know. We got it made, don't we? We're living in a good time.
Do you know? I don't know that this is true, but I gleaned this from the book. Do you know what it means? Don't that just get your goat?
No.
In the Middle Ages, many people just had to wander through the country. You know, and if they were too poor, they could go into the monasteries. The churches would have to take you in, but you had to leave the next morning. So it was an interesting network. But when you were out in the country, you could get robbed or anything. It was hard to make. But if you had a goat, you could live off the milk and the cheese. You could live off the goat. A goat could sustain you. And so the fear was people would steal your goat.
Get your goat.
And that happened to this guy.
Yeah.
They were making it, and they stole his goat, and it was like, oh no.
Damn.
So,
Well,
Ken Follett's a great writer.
I read some other Follett books. I think he's a great author.
Yeah.
But I never heard of that one. That's great. And then, what's your favorite word?
Cool.
Cool.
I probably say it more than anything.
Perfect. Well, that makes perfect sense because you are cool. And then, favorite band?
I think the band I had the most enjoyment out of was NRBQ.
Okay.
NRBQ. They were like a pub. If you never checked out NRBQ, check them out.
NRBQ jazz band?
No.
No.
Well, they had jazz influences. They were like a party. Do you guys know NRBQ? I don't know if they're listening. Music studio. They were kind of. They would play these clubs and bars, but they get really famous. They just check them out. Check out NRBQ.
Chicago band?
No. But not the modern version. You have to go back to 40, 30 years ago.
Well, growing up, I listened to soul music primarily. You would think in the South I'd listen to like shag music and stuff, but Isley Brothers, Kool and the Gang, Ohio Players, Earth, Wind and Fire. I mean, I was just drawn to it. And then in college, I heard Weather Report for the first time. And then I heard like Grover Washington and Stanley Turrentine, and I started to understand, the jazz influence back to that soul music and vice versa. And so I liked jazz all along. I just didn't know what it was until I was like, in my later 20s.
Sure.
So yeah.
Of course, I love all the jazz. I mean, I could go through a litany of groups in jazz that I love, and that's my first love musically to play.
Yeah. Well, I'm not going to try to out jazz band you. I think you got me on that. Well, let's talk about, we promoted.
Hey, you didn't ask me my favorite movie. Is that part of the deal here?
Well, sorry. What's your favorite movie, Kevin?
I had to narrow this one down between two.
Yeah.
But I would say it's Reservoir Dogs.
Ooh, I like that. That's the first Tarantino movie, right?
One of the first. It may not be in the first, but I think it was the first.
Yeah. Well, mine would be Pulp Fiction. So we're
real
really
close.
Cousins almost.
We're cousins, yeah.
Yeah. I think he's amazing. I heard one of his old girlfriends interviewed one time, who'd lived with him or something for a year or two, and they're like, "Well, why did you leave him?" She says, "Well, we come home every night and we'd watch 3 movies and go to bed. So all he wanted to do was watch movies. He's just crazy wired for movies." And thank goodness for us. I mean, he's
Let me ask.
brilliant.
I get to ask you a question later.
But not yet.
Okay, I'll ask.
Yeah, but you can ask a question now. Go ahead.
Like with that, we've had a few big name musicians in.
Yeah.
Faddis was here,
Yeah.
James Carter, Etienne Charles last year. All of them, what I noticed, they are 24/7 music. They never quit.
Yeah.
I was in Faddis's house one night. John Faddis, famous jazz trumpet player,
Yeah.
over at his apartment in Chicago. He never puts his trumpet up. He could be, hanging, his wife's cooking dinner, and he'll pick up the trumpet, say, "Remember this?"
Yeah.
And he puts it down, and he talks a little bit, and then he picks up the trumpet. And he never quits playing.
Right.
And I remember back some of the athletes I saw through my years teaching, had to kick them out of the gym. And I think the great musicians, I mean, they're so good because they never quit playing. It's like we never quit talking.
Yeah.
But I wonder in sales, you have to be bitten. You have to
You definitely have to. Like, I looked at it because I had played sports and I was a gym rat, right? I was you want to stay in the gym the whole time. And when that part of my life was over and I moved into sales, that became my new game, right? I'm trying to win the game. And so I was enamored with, winning the game, being a top performer, making President's Club or whatever. And a lot of athletes are drawn to sales for that reason. It's competitive to be in sales. But I'll tell you also from an entrepreneurial perspective, it is amazing how many people I run into that, they might be people like, I sat next to a guy when I was in college who was a very famous South Carolina entrepreneur. He owned movie stations or movie theaters all across the country. He developed most of Litchfield Beach. He owned car dealerships. I mean, he was a really famous guy. And I sat down next to him, and he goes, "Hey, John, have you seen any good movies lately?" I mean, he wanted to talk about movies and the movie business that he was in. So in his mind, he didn't want to leave his little domain of owning 600 theaters, or he would talk about car dealerships or whatever. He didn't want to be rude, but that's just where his mind was. And I think that's where you have to be. I don't think Steve Jobs was following like what the 49ers were doing,
Right.
that weekend. He's like about his product. And it's not for everybody, but to be a really hyper successful salesperson or jazz musician or entrepreneur, you got to stay focused. All right. So we're going to promote wheelsessions.com. Everyone should go to wheelsessions.com and sign up for the alerts. Is there anything else you want to promote?
No, I think that's it.
Don't you have a new album coming out?
I don't.
Yes, you do.
Oh!
Yes, you do.
I have a new album coming out. It was recorded right here at Spit and Spin
Yes.
Studios. It's Rise and Fall of Sweet Pea.
Yeah.
I don't know what the official title is.
Sweet Pea Rides Again.
But it was a Sweet Pea Rides Again. It was it was with John playing saxophone, Robert Nance on bass, and
Yes.
myself on drums.
Yeah.
And we came in, staying in the true jazz nature.
Yeah.
We had no rehearsal. We just came in and we played live.
Yeah. So Sweet Pea Rides Again
great.
will be on Spotify within a week.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Sorry, I forgot to promote
Well,
that. My
you
God.
do so many albums.
Dang it.
You're the ultimate side man.
There you go.
Well, Kevin, I thank you for being here today. Thanks for your friendship and for being nice to me when I approached you in the hotel lobby.
Likewise.
But yeah, I'm just thankful and delighted to know you, and thankful that you're willing to share a lot of your story with others that it might help them. So thank you.
You're very welcome.
All right.
Thank you, Jim.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate
All
it.
right.